What's up everyone, Lion Roar here, and this is episode 6 of the Gods Unchained Beginner's Guide, and today I'm going to tell you all about who the gods are and why they matter. But first, join me over in Gemstone Legends. It's a fantastic match 3 RPG game, and it's players that get in early on games like this that are at the biggest advantage. Not only will you help the channel out by using the link in the description of this video, but you're going to get a free epic hero named Moralia along with a bunch of gold, gems, and potions. After you download the game, you'll have access to events which will get you even more amazing heroes and loot. Guys, wow, you don't want to miss this opportunity because you do not get it in the regular App Store. Download it now, and I will see you in Gemstone Legends. Alright, so one of the first things you're going to notice when you try to play a match in Gods Unchained or build a deck is that you must choose a god or goddess, and there are 6 of them. The first is Luludia, who is the goddess of deception. Melissus is the goddess of death. Thariel is the god of light. Elirion is the god of magic. Aiona is the goddess of nature, and Oros is the god of war. And the reason this is important is because when you choose one of the gods either to build a deck or play a match, there's certain cards that can be used only with that god or goddess, although there are some cards that are neutral and can be used with all of them, but it changes the synergy and the style of the god you're playing with. So, for example, when I go to create a deck for Aiona, the goddess of nature, you can see that there's nature-specific cards here. Now, I talked all about this in the beginner's guide video to cards, so I'm not going to dive into it a whole lot here, but you can see that there's special markings on these cards indicating that they are nature cards. It's these sort of like root-looking or branch-looking things that are coming out of the mana cost here. And as I'm looking at all the cards that are available to this particular goddess, these are the ones that you'll only ever see in a nature deck. However, the cards that don't have any decoration on them that are coming out from the mana costs are neutral cards, and they can be used in all of the decks. So what's interesting about this is that there are some synergies potentially with the neutral cards that you don't get with the other decks that you do get perhaps with nature cards. I'm going to talk more about deck building and strategy in a later video, so make sure you're subscribed so that I can talk to you about that when the time comes, and you don't want to miss that one. I won't dive into it too deep here, but needless to say, there are specific cards for each god or goddess. But the other thing about the particular gods is that they each have god powers. And I want to talk through those god powers with you so that you understand when a game starts what you're doing with those. If you watched my video on how to play Gods Unchained, you're going to notice the very first decision you have to make when you start a game is to choose the god power. And there are 3 choices. Now, these god powers have changed as Gods Unchained has gone through a sort of evolution. They've powered them down a little bit because they really want to highlight the cards in the game rather than the powers that the gods have. So the powers that you see here today may change in the future. They may add some or take some away or change them or just kind of maybe keep the game interesting by rotating things around. So these are powers that are available right now. Just know that depending on the time that you're watching this video, they could be a little different. But in general, this is how this is going to work. When the game starts, you're going to make a choice of one of these 3. Thariel's is Heal, which costs 2 mana, Summon an Acolyte for 3 mana, or Lysander's Honor for 2 mana. So each of them do have different mana costs depending on how powerful the spell is as well. So Heal is going to heal 2, or yes, it's going to heal 2 to one of your characters. So it's 2 health points basically. If you need to know what that means, go watch my video on the cards so you understand for a creature what the health is and why that's important. Summon an Acolyte is going to summon a 2/2 creature with, that's 2 strength and 2 health. And it's just a little basic creature for 3 mana. It's not actually a real good rate, but it is card advantage because you can do that repeatedly once per turn. You can use a god power once per turn. And then Lysander's Honor is going to give -1 strength to an enemy creature. The powers that I tend to see used most for this god as of right now, have to do with synergies in particular decks. So there's a deck out there that uses Therial and involves a lot of healing because there's synergies around healing. So heal is used a lot. And then there's some cards or there's some decks out there that like a more aggressive or mid-range strategy that just want to put a lot of creatures out on the board. So the Summon Acolyte is the other god power that I tend to see used most for him. Melissa is the goddess of death, and these are her 3 powers. You can see the mana costs are 1, 2, and 3. So another thing to consider about these mana costs and what's good about Melissa is that depending on the cards in your deck, there is a mana curve. Again, I'm going to go over deck building and what a mana curve is in the future, so don't get too confused about it right now. But let's say you have a whole lot of cards in your deck that cost 1 and a whole lot that cost 3, but not a whole lot that costs 2. It might be in your benefit to choose the god power that has 2, especially if it has synergies with your deck, because if you don't have a 2 mana cost card on turn 2, you can always use the god power. But anyway, the 1 mana cost god power here is Soul Burn, which deals 1 damage to both gods. This is one that's used a lot because there is synergies with being frenzied and things like that. So especially in like the zombie deck that's floating around right now. The 2 mana costing god powers, Blood Ritual, destroy a creature with 1 health and heal for 1. I do see this power used a lot as well because it is really good removal. So in decks that don't really care about Frenzy to all that much, this is the other one that's used a lot. And then the Neferu's Sacrifice I actually don't see used a lot, but it's actually a really good power. Draw a card and take 2 damage. Especially if you can find a way to heal yourself up. Neferu's Sacrifice could be really, really good card advantage, but you would probably use that more in a control deck. Oros, God of War. His 3 powers are for 1 mana and Rage. Give +1 strength and deal 1 damage to one of your creatures. I do see this one used a lot in decks that give creatures Protect and are very aggressive. Because they just grow stronger and tend not to die, even if you're dealing a damage to your own creatures. Slayer is the one that I actually probably see used more often than any of the other god modes, and that's deal 2 damage to your opponent's god. I actually don't think this one's that super powerful, but if you are playing an aggressive deck, you're going to get their life down a lot. If they can't recover quickly enough or they don't have a lot of healing in their deck, then this is just a clock, you know. 2 damage every turn, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 5 turns if they're below 10 health is going to kill them. And then lastly, for 2 mana, Valka's Presence, summon a 1/1 Valknir Raider. I happen to like this one, but I don't see other people use it a lot. I do like it as card advantage in very aggressive decks, potentially. However, depending on what you're running and if it has the synergies you want or not, you may just want to use Enrage. But these are all powers that tend to be used. Slayer more often than the others. Aiona, the goddess of nature. She has a 1 mana Flourish power. Heal one of your creatures for 1. I do see this in especially like the regen decks, potentially. It's really, really hard for other players to deal with this particular spell if the creatures are constantly healing. Animal Bond is used a lot. Summon a 1/2 Badger with Confused. And Selena's Mark, I actually see Selena's Mark probably used more than the other 2. But there's actually kind of a split between them. They're all pretty good. Selena's Mark, deal 1 damage to a random enemy creature and heal your god for 1. That's awesome in a mid-range or more controlling deck because it is removal, and oftentimes you do get creatures down to either in an aggressive deck if they put it out that have 1 health, or if you're dealing damage to their creatures, sometimes those pesky creatures stick around with 1 health. Or you're facing that deck that's dealing damage to its own creatures and they get it to 1 life. Well, you can use Selena's Mark and potentially remove the creature and heal yourself. Elirion, the god of magic, has a 1 mana Clear Mind 4/1. I don't see this one used too often, but I do see it from time to time, usually in decks that are more controlling decks and want to siphon through their deck for something in particular. This is one that might be used in combo decks as well. I don't see too many combo decks out there, but if those come along for 1 mana, a 4/1 is going to be really good in a combo deck. There's also a 2 mana deal 1 damage. This is probably the by far most used power for Elirion currently, because it's just straight up removal, or you get towards the end of the game, you need to deal a couple damage to the god. You can choose where this 1 damage goes. And then for 3 mana, Palace Genius, add a random 1 mana magic spell to your hand. I don't see this one used a lot, but it is card advantage, so I think it's actually a relatively good spell, but it just costs 3 mana, so maybe that's why people don't use it as much. And Luludia, the Goddess of Deception, has a 2 mana Thievery. Add a random 1 mana card from your opponent's domain to your hand. I do probably see this used more often in Luludia decks than any other power here, probably by far, because it's just amazing card advantage. And then we also have a 2 mana Flip, draw 2 cards, then shuffle 2 cards into your deck. I don't actually really like this god power all that much, but it could be used in a potential combo deck when you really need to find specific cards. But it's not card advantage like Thievery is, so people would just rather go with Thievery and gain cards. And then there's also a 2 mana Orpheo's Distraction, deal 1 damage to a creature and give it hidden until the end of turn. This is another god power that's used a lot for this particular deck because it is removal, or a clever thing that you can do with this power is if there are a lot of like frontline creatures out, or something like that, that like, let's say you want to attack their god and not their frontline creature, you can actually give this to the frontline creature and just go right around it and hit the god anyway, or hit other creatures, because if a creature is hidden, it cannot be attacked. So just hide the frontline creature on the opposing side of the battlefield, and then it's not a problem. So that's what's cool about that power. I think that's an underrated power. I do see people use it. I don't think I see enough people use it, so that's a good one too. And lastly, if you're interested in the lore of Gods Unchained and want to know the stories around the gods, if you go to their website and click on the Learn tab and then click on Lore, you're going to see all the stories that they've been putting out. Not all of them are related necessarily to the particular gods. However, of course, if you start with chapter 1, it's going to give you the basis of who the gods are and what's going on in the world of Gods Unchained. And then, of course, you can go back and read all the other stories that there are here. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you know when I drop new videos or go live, and I will catch you in the next one.